about what's the difference between trauma sensitive and trauma informed. And there are some big differences there. I think right now in yoga, the words trauma sensitive and trauma informed, and remember, I'm just talking about yoga here. And I believe that a lot of people are using those words synonymously to mean the same thing. And I think a lot of times what they mean is I'm a trauma informed teacher, meaning I know that trauma affects people. I've had some training around that. What that training is, it differs. For some people, it's mainly mindfulness training. For other people, it would be training around interoception, around how one feels within their body and how they interpret that and then live from that place, or everything in between. The training that I've had is trauma sensitive, meaning it's body-based. One way to describe it would be from the bottom up. So sensations in the body are the guidance through which we then apply what yoga practices might be useful and might not be useful. And that's where the research comes from. And I'm very excited to show you some of the research and then show you where else to look at other research around trauma sensitive. This is rooted in Bessel van der Kolk's work and then expanded from Bessel van der Kolk through David Emerson. David Emerson wrote a book in 2001 called Overcoming Trauma. And he's also written another book, I think it came out in 2013, called Bringing the Body into Treatment. He is who I directly learned from for trauma-centered, trauma-sensitive yoga. It was a 300-hour program. But I was incorporating trauma-sensitive yoga into my teacher training since his first book came out, because as a addictions and mental health therapist, I found that the things that he was pointing out were very important in the work that I was doing. Not only as a therapist, but as a yoga teacher. And I'm still finding that those things have merit in the work that I'm doing. Now, trauma informed, to me, and maybe I know to a lot of others, but what I'm going to say about the term trauma informed is, in psychology, trauma informed comes from a different place than trauma sensitive. In fact, it may even be on the other side of a continuum. If you were to put trauma sensitive on the left side of a straight line, you could put trauma informed on the other side of that straight line. If trauma sensitive is a bottom up process, a body-based process, trauma informed could be a cognitive based process, a mindfulness based process. And I don't like to draw dualities because I kind of don't believe in dualities. I'm kind of a non-dualist, but for the sake of kind of trying to understand where did these terms come from, trauma informed, from my line of work, it comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. It comes from a place of learning what cognitions, what thoughts, what reframing, what substitutions can I use to meet my feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and depression that come from a trauma. And usually those traumas are physical, medical, or combat. And that's a very simplified, for an introductory workshop kind of explanation. There's a lot more to that, and those certainly are not absolute statements. But if you kind of want to know in a very general way, as far as yoga might be concerned, what's the difference between trauma-sensitive practices and trauma-informed practices? A trauma-sensitive practice is body-based. The body leads the practice. A trauma-informed yoga approach would be from the top down. It's maybe more of an approach of I'm going to think about and then have my body follow a formulaic type of practice regimen. However, I find in the field that these terms are being used synonymously. You could go to a trauma-informed workshop and have a lot of the things that we're going to discuss as body-based practices be there. You could go to a trauma-sensitive workshop and have a lot of mindfulness type stuff in there. It's all homogenized, if that's the right word I want to use. It's all mixed up together. So what does it mean? I'm not sure. But the trauma-sensitive approach is a body-based approach. And I think that's why Amanda and I connect so well on this, and why I find that the body-based practices seem to make a lot of sense. Breath is a body-based practice. Movement is a body-based practice. Trauma-informed practices around mindfulness might be more about journaling. They might be more about talk therapy and so on. So that's just kind of a basic, what are these terms and what might they mean? It's an ongoing conversation and one that I find pretty fascinating.